Welcome. This is Tarheel247, a UNC basketball podcast. Make sure to like, share, subscribe to the channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. We're everywhere. Without further ado, I want to introduce and welcome in Andrew Jones. We got him in the notes as the North Carolina insider from Tarheel247, but he's a legendary UNC insider. When I was in school, I used to see his stuff, and when I started working with 247, it's finally kind of cool to kind of talk to you and put a name to the face, because I've known you for 20 years now?
Yes,
in some sort of fashion.
So you guys read my stuff and still talk to me? That's pretty wild.
Look, man, maybe my freshman year I may have closed off, put the blinders on, but the last 2 years we were pretty good. We weren't bad. So
your freshman year at the end when you moved inside more, and you kind of it was an adjustment for you, obviously. But once you moved inside more and you guys started playing a lot better, I remember talking to you after the William and Mary game in the NIT that you were comfortable finally, and you guys took off, and that was sort of the blueprint for the next couple of years. One of the things I love about doing this, John, is seeing guys like you come in as freshmen, and you're not talking much, you're nervous and all that. By the time you leave, you can interview us, and I think it's kind of ironic now that you're going to interview me, which is ironic and very cool.
It is cool just to kind of be on the side. Even when I'm old teammates, I'm like asking the questions. And, when you talk about the William and Mary game, that was a game that I'll never forget, because I felt like I turned a corner as a player, and it was kind of trajectory was up from there. So glad you remember that.
I remember talking to Tyler Zeller after that, because that game was in Carmichael, if you remember. And I remember talking to Tyler Zeller. They had those weird steps in Carmichael because the way it was layered. And he's sitting on the steps. And I'm talking to him after the game. We were talking about you. I could probably find that article somewhere. If I find it, I'll send it to you, because I know I wrote it. Definitely.
Listen, I always tell people Zeller should have been starting, but I think Coach Williams had a bigger plan. He wanted to get my feet wet and be ready to play for next year. So
it worked.
That's back when I was playing. This is for this year and this year's team. We're going to kind of have an early kind of practice scrimmage report and outlook for the season. First guy I want to touch on, I saw him at Media Day, got to chat with him. He's got charisma. He's got Ari. He's a franchise owner of Ben & Jerry's. I mean, what else can he do? Is Seth Trimble, the team's leading, returning scorer and unquestioned kind of heartbeat of this team. What have you seen from him and heard, throughout the offseason on this kid?
One of the things I love about Seth, and you know that you need guys like this, he's a grab a fist of the jersey guy and play for that what's on the front of that jersey.
Yep.
And he understands it. You know exactly what it's like. He understands it. He's playing for the front of the jersey. He's playing for those banners. That can be a little awesome for some kids when they come in sometimes, because it's a big load, but he fully gets it. And one of the things I think that's important about Seth going in this year, and I do think Seth can produce a lot of numbers, but I don't think his numbers are going to be the most important thing that he gives this team. He's going to be that DNA. He's going to be that vibe throughout the year. And this is a group that hasn't lost yet, and at some point they're going to lose a game, and he's going to be vital when they do. He was outstanding last year after losses, being up front and honest, and I think he'll be that way this year. And because of that, when these guys are looking around, they're going to look for that rudder. It's going to be him. And even if he's the third or fourth leading scorer, I think he's going to be that guy that gets them in a huddle. He's the guy that says stuff to them, and they're going to look to him all year long. And in addition to that, by the way, he's a great defensive player. I think he can be a really good weak side rebounder. He's fantastic in transition. He's a better perimeter shooter than he showed last year, because a lot of that was after the concussion when he really struggled. And he's a guy that can drive. And I think now with the way this team's going to be set up, it's going to be a little bit more conducive to driving options for somebody like him. He just has to finish at the rim better. If he can finish at the rim at a higher percentage, he's going to add 2.5, 3 points a game to his scoring. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. He's going to be someone that we're going to talk to probably after every game. He's going to be a voice of the team, and he's going to be a voice of the team with us, and I think he's going to be a voice of the team to them as well.
I kind of think about, I'm thinking about this year, but also he's kind of the last of the culture setter, right? Like, there's 11 new guys. He's kind of been in different regimes, and he's been there, and he's kind of, the Carolina kind of culture. That's the last guy. So it's going to be interesting to see, obviously we have younger guys coming up, but, he's got to be able to set the standard, and hopefully we can carry that on. That's what I think he's going to be doing for this team. So I'm excited for him.
Well, he's also an ear for Hubert.
Yeah.
And I talked to Hubert last week in Charlotte about just that. It's all Hubert's team now. There are no more Roy guys. They're gone.
Yeah.
With RJ, they're gone. And Seth is not only a 4-year guy at the same program, but he's a 4-year guy with the same coach. So he's Hubert's first 4-year recruit to go all the way through the full cycle. And Hubert's going to want to send messages to him, to the team sometimes. He's going to use them for that. And Seth, I think, is perfect. He's smart. He's charismatic. He 100% is connected with Hubert. I think that they both have a deep relationship. And because of that, sort of the voice on the floor isn't just going to be coming from Seth, but he's going to be relaying some stuff from Hubert as well. And I think that'll be really important, especially early in the year, before the team gets fully connected with how Hubert does things in season.
For sure. And moving on to the kind of, it's funny, we're calling this off-season edition. I'm calling it free agent. The top free agent priority for the Heels, Henry Vesar. He kind of tried to get us to say it right at AC Media. I couldn't get it right. Vesar, whatever. I'm going to leave it at that. A transfer from Arizona, the big get, for UNC and the staff and Coach Davis. What have you heard from him? What have you seen? What is he going to do this year? Because he's the guy. He's the guy that everyone said we had to get. We got him.
Yep. He's a legit 7 feet, so he's taller than you.
Yes, he is.
And you saw him last week. And he plays 7 feet. A lot of big guys spend so much time trying to be handlers and perimeter dudes and all that they don't always play big on the lower block, and he does. Just in watching him in drills last week in practice, there was a big man finesse. It was 7-footer who looked 7 feet, kept the ball up high, finished, did all that kind of stuff. I don't know where the weaknesses are with him right now, because I think that's something we'll find out as the season goes on. The positives are that 7 feet is 7 feet. He's a rim protector. He's a very good weak side defender. He can rotate and help out, and that was a huge problem last year. And the other thing, too, is what we're told is he's really good at playing ball screens. So his guy can set ball screens. He can set ball screens. He could do both. Last year's team was not a good screening team. They didn't handle ball screens well. They didn't roll well defensively, didn't have size to boot. So they were constantly in trouble down low. He's going to change that for him. And he has the ability to step out and do some other stuff. And how he plays with Caleb Wilson, to me, is going to be a key. We talked to Caleb last week, and he emphasized the two of them playing the high-low game.
And look, big ball. That's what I played when I was there. Hopefully they can kind of find some rapport. Only issue was me and Z kind of was there for 2 or 3 years together. So hopefully they can kind of figure that out. So we'll see. I don't know. Have you seen any big ball, or it's a new day and age? I don't know. Or, perimeter oriented type things, or
it is
going to do that 4 or 5 screen and roll at the free throw line, maybe.
I think we'll see some of that. It won't be you and Tyler.
Yeah.
But you guys moved, and you guys were constantly moving and screening for each other. So that's just the way you go from block to block. But I also think you don't have a Kendall Marshall out there. When you have Kendall out there, you can run a lot of box sets and stuff and get looks. Yeah. I don't think they have that kind of playmaker or that kind of point guard, so they're going to be more spread out. I think this is a club that a lot of dudes are going to have a couple assists a game. I'm not sure they're going to have a high-volume assist player. So buckets are going to come a lot differently than did when you guys were playing 2 bigs. But I do think that with a 4 like Caleb, or even if Jiren Stevenson plays a 4, they're so athletic that they can be really good baseline guys. So you have that weak side game, you have that baseline game, you have that high-low game and that lob game. I was surprised when Caleb mentioned that the two of them will throw lobs to each other. We haven't seen that for a while at Carolina. Well, really anywhere. You don't see it very often anymore. So I do think they're going to use a lot more space than you and Tyler did. But I also think that if they have to play big and go down and be fairly conventional, that they're going to be able to do that. Because I think Caleb Wilson, and you haven't asked about him yet, but I think he may not be a great scorer yet, but he can do pretty much everything else at this level already. So you can have him down there and have them play off of each other and force other teams to try to play big, which would make them out of character. So Carolina can actually put people out of character more this year than they were able to last year. And because of that, I think they're going to have some success. And for Hubert, he's got a lot of options.
I agree, and that's kind of helps me lead to the next to the segue of the next player, Caleb Wilson, obviously highest rated recruit in the 2020 class for Carolina, 8th ranked player in the class according to 24/7 Sports. Expectations are kind of through the roof. I mean, there hasn't been this much hype. I mean, he's got a shoe deal. He's projected top 10 guy in the draft. What have you heard about him at this point or seen, and what should we expect from him this season?
Unbelievable maturity.
Yeah.
The nervous John Henson we talked about earlier when you came in as a freshman, that's not the case with this guy. But they have different experiences now too. And he has been in front of the media a lot before he even got to Carolina. But he's also one of those dudes that's just wired for it. We had him last week, and it was an incredible interview. The things that he talked about, the understanding, the maturity, the recognition that it's not about being the man, it's about being one of 5 men on the floor. You don't always hear freshmen say that. Not that they think that they're the man; they just don't know what to say. But he spoke like a team spokesman. He was asked a really good question, saying, "Can you, as a freshman, get on somebody?" And he said, "Yes, but I could only get on them if they understand that they can get on me." That's a mature response, and I think that's important because the ebb and flow of the season, and he's going to be really good at times, and maybe the times he's going to struggle. And if Henry or if Seth or somebody else can get on him to get him right, and he's responsive to it, that'll be huge. Because I don't think last year's team, the guys were very responsive to some of that. Not all of them. And that's part of the reason that group didn't really grow that much, because it's not just the coach's job. They have to grow from within. You talked about culture earlier. You guys had that culture. You had that self-policing culture that allowed for more growth than just Roy doing it on his own. And I think this group has the potential for that because of Seth on one end, but then a freshman like Caleb because of all the intangibles he brings to the court. And by the way, he's a really good player. And he's a guy that should be a very good defensive player for a freshman. He says he can guard 1 through 5. I've been told that he can bring the ball up the court and get you into an offensive set even. And he wants to show the league he can do those things, but he also recognizes it makes the team better. So all positives with him. We'll see him. I'll be in Salt Lake next week, get to see him go up against AJ DeBan. So that'll be interesting how he handles that. It's a meaningless game, but it's a really important game at the same time. So I think Carolina fans have a really good, solid player at the minimum in Caleb Wilson.
Yeah, I've heard some things about his playmaking ability. I think that people are not expecting. He can pass the ball and facilitate a lot more than we're expecting.
Yeah, I was told don't be surprised if 2 guys 6'9" or taller are among the top 4 in assists.
Ooh, I like that.
Henry being one of them. Henry's supposed to be a really good passer, great vision, great. And you could see that in some of the Arizona film. Where he's not a black hole. When he gets the ball, he'll find people, and he's got really good vision. And the 2 of them working together, I think it goes back to Caleb talking about the high-low game. If one's open, they're going to see it, and they're going to be willing to get them the ball. It's one thing to see a guy open, but being a willing passer is another thing. And if you have 2 bigs that can move the ball and get other people in scoring situations, that's huge.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think the big forward spot. It's on paper and on the court, right? Obviously, we haven't seen Caleb play, but pretty short up. So I'm gonna move kind of to the perimeter now, where I think there's a lot more questions. Maybe not about the scoring, but getting people into plays, getting people involved. And I'm gonna start with Luca Bogavac. Bogavac. He comes over from the United States after playing last season in the SC Derby in the Adriatic League, which is a pretty good league. Been classified as a junior. A lot of buzz about him. I saw him shooting the hell out of the ball. Got a nice stroke. Not scared to shoot it in your face. It kind of looked kind of NBA-ish, the shots he was taking. You don't usually see that in college, contested 3-pointers.
I was joking with somebody at practice last week. I said, there are 2 things in sports that will make my knees buckle. One of them is a beautiful swing in baseball. And the other thing is a beautiful catch and shoot jump shot.
Yep.
I got goosebumps watching him shoot. It's beautiful. And it's a pretty quick release. I know everybody's looking for the next Brady Manick, and there are very few dudes that get rid of it as quickly as he did. But Luca's up there, and he's a legit 6'6", by the way. So he's a 6'6" guy with a quick release out there. That's tough to defend. And I think you're going to see a lot of ball swinging with this group. Going back to what I said earlier, a lot of dudes with 2 assists a game. So if they can swing the ball and they have dudes that can knock it down, remember what I said about Seth. Seth's going to be able to drive more. Those opportunities are going to be there more. And I think Luca is absolutely enormously important. I know there's a lot of guys you can say are X factors. I read something the other day, and John Rothstein said that Kyan Evans is an X factor. You can say Henry is. You can say Caleb is. But in a way, Luca kind of is. Because if you have a dude that's 22 and can knock that stuff down and is unfazed, and he's open and he's got a quick release and he's really consistent, that changes everything for a team. So he can be that changer. He's the guy that could take them from 30th in the country, where people have them now basically about the average, to a top 10 team, because he's that consistent shot maker. It's funny, Hubert, if he's ever asked a question, you want shooters? Is this guy a shooter? And Hubert's like, I don't want shooters. I want makers. A lot of guys shoot. Yeah. He wants makers. And I think Luca's a guy that has the potential to prove to be a high volume maker.
Yeah. The best Carolina teams had volume 3-point makers. We'll call them makers, right? Like, I think what I love about a guy like Luca is when I'm watching college basketball season, right? 4 or 5 point game, it's tight. 3, right? Maybe hit a couple 3. Like, so we haven't had that kind of threat, and the best college teams have the threat where, you've seen it for years, right? We go on a run, the way we move and play, we hit a couple 3s. Now you're down 12, and we didn't punch you in the mouth. So,
or it stops you. It stops.
Yeah. Yep.
That's huge. And last year, RJ struggled at times. He had some stretches where he struggled, especially early. He ended up having a pretty good last 6 weeks or so of the season, but there was so much on him to make those shots. I think with Luca, when you look at the rest of the roster, there's not going to be a ton of pressure on him to make all those shots, but if he does, it takes them to another level.
For sure. I'm excited. I watched some clips, and I'm interested to see what he does, with his athleticism. I think that's one thing people kind of talk about. Hey, look, like, is he going to be able to? But he played in the Adriatic League. I think he will be okay.
I would think so.
Next, we got Kyan Evans, transfer from Colorado State, another shot maker. Hopefully, I'm gonna steal that from you now. Have you heard about his play, and what do you envision his role being for Carolina?
I'm really interested in watching him next week in Salt Lake, because I didn't watch him a whole lot in practice. We had 25, 30 minutes, and I was watching other guys. So if we had more time, I would have spent more time on him. But when I watched Colorado State last season, he jumped out. They had a first-round pick, Nate Clifford, and he connected with him really well. So he knows how to play with really good players, which I think is a good sign, because he's on a team now with a lot more really good players than what he had last year at Colorado State, and they were pretty good. But he's also a winner. He entered the starting lineup for Colorado State last year. They were 5-5. They went 21-5 the rest of the way. If you go watch the Memphis game in the NCAA tournament, that's a dude. That's a dude. Yes. So you're talking what Caleb Wilson can do, and what Henry can do, and what Luca can do, and what Seth can do. Then you throw in what Kyan can do. I think what he does is he's sort of like that batting lineup in baseball where the number 9 hitter can hit line drives to the gap. They have a lot of people that can hurt you, and I think Kyan's a guy that can hurt teams. He's not going to score 15 to 20 a night. I don't think he has to, but I think there are going to be some nights where he flares up. He needs to flare up, and he can lift them to the winner's circle. And the other thing, too, that is the question mark, is how much can he run a team? And we'll have to wait and see, because he did have Nate Clifford at Colorado State, and he just give him the ball and he scores and he gets an assist sometimes for it. So we'll see how he meshes in that sense. But everything I'm hearing from people is that it's going very, very well. They like him a lot. The players are very connected. He was a guy that came in and almost immediately was meshed. So that's a big thing. That's important, especially with 11 new players, like you noted earlier. So I think, again, John Rothstein said X factor. I know like Carolina fans don't like him, but still, that X factor. He does know ball. He said he does know ball for sure. He may not project NCAA tournament fields properly, but he knows ball, right? I'm only throwing a little bit of shade there for fun. But I think if he says X factor, then people need to take that legitimately. They have 5 that we've mentioned so far in a way. And that's because this team does have some talent, does have experience for the most part, other than Caleb. And I think experience is not an issue for him. And Kyan is a guy that, if you see what he did in elevating Colorado State last year, if he can have that effect this season with the Tar Heels, then they're in really good hands with him. I tend to be a lot more positive, John, about this team going in than some other people. I like the individual parts. I like the potential for meshing. I like the fact that Hubert's got a lot of versatility. And we'll have to see if all that comes together. But each of the parts we're talking about right now are all pretty good parts.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. How does it come together? Because, you look at it on paper, it's like, okay, this team should be a top, I don't want to be too, biased, but 15, right? Like top 15 team, perennial, like just throughout the season. And with Kai and Evans, I'll never forget it. I'm watching a game and I'm thinking I'm like a bar in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm watching Colorado State and Memphis. And I'm like, who is that?
Yeah.
Who is that? And it's crazy that he's with the Tar Heels now. He buried Memphis. I mean, he was I think when he hit 6 or 7 threes, I mean, he kind of steadied that ship. So I'm glad he is with us.
Johnny's unfazed. He was unfazed in that game. Like the moment wasn't the moment for him. Or it was, and he embraced it. Either way, he's a guy that went from 18, 20 minutes a game to starting, changed the team, and that day he stepped up in the biggest win Colorado State's had in a long time. And he was the dude there. So you're getting an accomplished guy who has a lot of confidence, who has been on a pretty big stage. And I think that that's all positives for Carolina moving forward.
For sure. And then that'll take us to our next kind of addition from a player who's played in some big time games, had some big time moments on national television as well. Jiren Stevenson, played his first 2 years at Alabama, Final Four championship. What do you envision his role being? Because I have a friend that he coaches Arkansas State now, Ryan Pannone. He was at Alabama, the offensive coordinator. He said that guy was the most talented player on their team those 2 years. Now, it didn't translate, obviously, to the court as much as they wanted, but he said if you can unlock him and get him angry and say, hey, look, I'm that guy, he said the sky's the limit for this kid. He's an NBA player.
I like to see a guy's high-end game and try to figure out if that's who he can be on a regular basis. And when you look at Jiren, go back to the regional final 2 years ago against Clemson.
Yeah. Yep.
But they don't go to the Final Four without him that day. And he was a freshman. Remember, he enrolled a year early. He reclassed. So he's a young junior. And he did start a lot at Alabama, played a lot of minutes. Nate Oates trusted him, and Nate Oates is a guy that it's hard to earn his trust. So there were things he did well. I agree with you about being unlocked. David Sisk is our analyst, one of our main analysts on the site, and he saw Alabama 4 or 5 times in person last year, and he said Jiren Stevenson was in the wrong system.
Yeah,
at Alabama. That his skill set and everything else translates more to what Hubert wants to do than it did Nate Oates. And he says, I think he's got a chance to be like the surprise player in the team because he could be unlocked. There's so much game there. There's so much potential there. And it kind of looked at times watching him Alabama like he was sort of playing in a straitjacket. And he didn't have the opportunity to sort of flap his wings as a player, so to speak. He'll get that opportunity now at the 3 and at the 4. And when he has another big that can pass, which we were talking about earlier, and that will see him, I think he's got a chance to be a really good baseline player. Someone that could finish, someone that can move on the baseline, and it can be very fluid there and create some scoring opportunities for himself. So I'm looking forward to that. And there's also the defensive side. RJ last year in the Dean Dome, he had Jiren on him a lot, and RJ struggled big time. So you've got a 6'10 guy, a legitimate six. Alabama listed him at 6'11. He's actually 6'10. And you got a 6'10 dude who can defend someone like RJ, and he could drop down and defend on the block. That's another versatile piece for Hubert to use that could force other teams to adjust. If you have a lineup where Jiren is at the 3 and you've got Caleb Wilson at the 4 and you've got Henry at the 5 or even Zayen High off the bench at the 5, Carolina went from the smallest team I've ever covered in Chapel Hill to a club like you played on with a bunch of big dudes and versatile guys too. So I like what Jiren gives them. I don't 100% know what to etch in stone with him other than he will defend. He's going to play with great energy. And I think a new lease on life in basketball is really good for him. And he's 10 miles from home. So he's got a support system now that he didn't quite have all the time in Tuscaloosa. So we should see a better version of him.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think that's the one guy. I mean, when you think about Alabama, another guy like Kyan Evans, where I was like watching TV, and I just remember him having these moments where I was like just jaw to the floor, like, whoa, like, who is this kid, right? He only averaging 8 points a game, right? He'd have those type of moments. So I'm excited for him to get in. It won't be a lot of pressure. right? He's got, an NBA prospect in front of him and Vesar as well. And I think he can play some 5 too, right? Like I think he can slide to the 5. And I mean, I'm so excited about the versatility of this team.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what Hubert does to play with the lineups.
Well, he's a smart player. He's long, and if you're a 3 like he was at Alabama, or you're a 4 like he's going to be a lot at Carolina, sliding over to the 5, if you've got good defenders in front of you, he'll be able to handle that no problem defensively. And even offensively, I think there's a little jump hook game. I think there's a little up and under game there.
Yeah.
Block against a slower dude. I think there's some stuff there that we're going to see that we didn't see at Alabama.
I wonder if Hubert still does the do they still split sides and do the bigs and the guards, or is it different vibe?
No, they still split. They still split a lot.
Okay, well, he should have a counter and a main.
Well, he's going to do both. When at practice, he was on both. So the guard doing stuff, he was over there. Then he was over there with the bigs doing stuff too.
Nice. All right. So
next, Hubert's going to keep a lot of that stuff going.
Yeah. Next, I'm going to go. I got to keep it low, right? Well, if you listen to this, look, you got the secrets, right? So, Derek Dixon, comes, out of Gonzaga High School in DC, team takeover, EYBL. Listen, our producer Kenny's always got some extra pizzazz with this guy. He's a DC guy too. So, 4-star, 45th rank in the class, newcomer, apparently one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter, from what I'm hearing from players. Have you heard about him? What do you see his role being, on this team?
I've said this a couple of times previously. I'm a DC guy too, Northern Virginia and DC.
Listen,
that Catholic League he played in is best conference in the country. It's so competitive. Sure. And he was the Washington Post Player of the Year, which means it's not just numbers. They know what they're doing up there when they do that stuff. He's a leader. He's an edge guy. He's a floor general, and he can score. And we had him a couple of weeks ago too, and highly impressive dude. He spoke to us like a guy who went to Gonzaga, which is an outstanding school. And I'll say this: he's from Vienna, Virginia. It's about a 45-minute to an hour commute to Gonzaga. In that DC traffic. He made that every day. That's a committed dude. That's a disciplined dude. And I've heard a lot of really good stuff about him, which is why I was kind of hesitant about Kyan Evans. As much as I like his potential and upside, I'm hearing tremendously positive things about Derek Dixon. That when Derek steps onto the floor as a legit 6'5" point guard, that they're going to be fine. They have two dudes that they totally trust with the ball in their hands. There's a lot of people that were concerned that maybe Seth would have to get on the ball, and I don't think that's Seth's strength. And then if Seth doesn't have to be on the ball, they're going to be fine with either Kyan or Derek, and they could do a lot of stuff. Kyan can move to the 2. He's a catch and shoot dude. So if you take him off the ball and move him to the 2, kind of like when RJ was a better shooter as a 2 than he was as a 1, then you have an opportunity right there with another really good shooter, and you can take advantage of some of Kyan's other skills. So a lot of really positive things about Derek. I think he's a guy that will handle being on this stage, playing for this program, wearing that uniform really, really well. There's a ton of maturity and floor general stuff. And I also think he's one of those dudes that won't care about numbers. Sometimes you have a guy that legitimately doesn't really care about the numbers, and he might be one of those guys. He just wants to win. And if he's on the floor and they're making plays and someone else is scoring, he's going to be just as happy as if he scored. He has some of those intangibles that are impressive. And again, it comes from that league he plays in. He played DeMatha 3 times, I think, last year. They play a great schedule, play a national schedule, and Team Takeover is a highly competitive AAU program. So he's sort of a dude that's ready to give them minutes. If something happens and there's an injury and Hubert has to play him for 32 minutes a game, I think Hubert will be pretty comfortable with that.
Yeah, I've heard he's a steadying force. I read about it and I'm seeing just from people I know, just he's a guy that is going to probably carve out a role. I mean, I could see at the moment, right, like it kind of being the 3-headed monster at the guard spot, and each of those guys getting an ample amount of minutes, and down the stretch, right. If he's needed, I think he could finish some games this year for the Tar Heels.
Let me tell you one other thing that somebody told me about him that's been around here in the last few months, that he plays with his head up. He sees everything. And a lot of young point guards don't see everything. They're so consumed about getting into a set or what's the defender doing, or all those kinds of things. He sees everything and he can respond and react to everything. So that's another trait that, again, is sort of who he is as a dude, who he is as a player, and he's already got that going into college, and which is why I think there'll be comfort with him running the show.
For sure. And next, we're going to kind of move on to Jonathan Powell, freshman season, West Virginia. He played a lot of minutes. My guy, he's a coach. He went to the Carolina camp. He watched pickup. He said that was a guy that stood out to him, making shots, but not being scared to take shots. So what can you tell me about him, coming from West Virginia?
He told us 2 weeks ago he's the best shooter in the country.
Okay, so yeah.
A lot of guys think that, right? John Henson, he was the best shooter in the country too, right?
Confidence is part of it.
He is a good shooter, but I think he's itching to show people there's more to his game. Mm-hmm. And that's, if you go look at his numbers last year at West Virginia, he wasn't getting rebounds through the first half of the season. And then the rebounds shot up in the second half of the season. And he said it was because he just got more comfortable. He was a freshman starting. I think he started because the coach went to Indiana, by the way. His son got injured, and he was supposed to be a sharpshooter. And I think Jonathan may have been a little overwhelmed for a while, but he adapted, he adjusted, and he started losing himself in the game more. And suddenly you're seeing 5, 6, 7, 8 rebounds. And Hubert thinks he could be a fantastic weak side offensive rebounder, a really good offensive rebounder. And Jonathan told us that there is a lot to his game with the handle. Like, he can pound it on the floor, pull up in a jump shot, he can get to the rim. I think the book on him is jump shooter and defensive player. But if there's more to his game, and if there is that edge, which we're hearing legendary stories now about him ripping his jersey off in practice. In fact, last week in Charlotte, after Hubert finished in the breakout room, I asked him, I said, does he really rip his jersey? He goes, oh, yeah. And he did it at West Virginia too. So if you have a guy, Cormac Ryan was the dude who kicked the ball and knocked over a water cooler. I think a team needs a guy like that.
For sure.
Dude like that sometimes. So if Jonathan Powell, who says he's the best shooter in the country, is also okay doing some of that lunch pail stuff and doing some of that edgy stuff, then there might be something there. There might be a much better player there than people are anticipating right now. He's also only a sophomore. So if he stays at Carolina and gives a possible 3 years to Carolina, I think he's one of those dudes that could become a really good player by the time he leaves, and maybe a good player this year. It's just hard to see where all the pieces fit in just yet. They're gonna have to play a bunch of games before Hubert sort of has his rotation down and understands how this guy meshes with that guy, which is why it's going to take a little bit of time. Kansas game is going to be interesting to see how much Hubert feels like he's set for that night, by the way. And I think it'll be interesting telling us what he thinks about guys like Jonathan Powell and Derek Dixon, how much they play that night, because he's going to coach to win. Roy sometimes would coach, we got to get better in February and March, and he would coach that way at times. Hubert is one of those coaches that coaches a little bit more to win right there. So we'll learn a lot about what he thinks about Jonathan Powell, I think, that night. But again, positives. I hate to sound like I'm a cheerleader here, because I'm not, but there's a lot of positives, and I've been hearing nothing but positives since the spring when these guys started rolling in.
Yeah, I look at this team and I see some of the talent they have. It's like the NBA, right? You don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you don't get 4 preseason games. You don't get to, see what you have until it's probably out there, right? Which is interesting. I think Powell, per se, could carve out a big role, or maybe not. We just don't know. He's going to have to make shots. We know that. And good thing about the NIL is, look, you're getting paid. So if you play well in your role, you will get paid again or paid more. So it behooves you to contribute in all aspects, even if you're not getting the minutes you want to get.
And Carolina's going to have the cash to pay these kids.
Yeah. With that, I like that. I like the sound of that. Next, we got Jaden Young. Comes to Carolina, 2 seasons at Virginia Tech, where he was kind of relied upon almost to a fault, right? Like, they kind of rolled the ball out and said, hey, go get us a bucket, or hey, be the guy.
Yeah.
What have you heard on him, and where do you see him fitting in this Carolina team?
We talked to him last week, and I sat behind the Cal bench and watched Cal Virginia Tech ACC tournament game on a Tuesday. I was one of the 5 people watching that game. And I watched it because I wanted to watch. I really enjoyed watching the kid from Cal that transferred, I think, to Illinois. I'm drawing a blank on his name real fast right here, but I was watching to see him a lot. Plus, I just wanted to relax and watch basketball. And I noticed that Mike Young drew up a couple plays for Jaden Young in that game. It was a close game. So I asked Jaden about it last week, and he says, yeah, his coach just started showing more and more belief in me. And that was sort of the difference for him. It wasn't opportunity. It was coach showing more. It was opportunity because coach showed more belief in him. It wasn't anything that he did differently as a player. He just got to play more. So if you go to late February, he had a stretch of about 9-day stretch where he scored 27 and 26 against Miami and Boston College. I know those are low-end ACC teams, but still ACC ball. You score 27 and 26 in an ACC game, you got something. Yeah. And I think with him, if he's the 10th man, let's say, who else in the country has a 10th man who scored 27 and 26 in an ACC-type games last year? I don't think anybody does. So there's an insurance with him. There's a luxury having a guy like that there, and he wants to be there. I was told that when he committed to Carolina, he told them, I don't need any NIL money. I just want to wear the uniform. He's from Goldsboro, and he's passionate. He told us last week, growing up until a couple of years ago, he would be nervous the morning of a Duke-Carolina game. Butterflies. So it'll be interesting to see what the Butterflies are like now that he's putting on a uniform. He's going to run out of the tunnel and play in one of those games. So I think at the minimum, he's really good insurance. And he's a good practice player, and he's a guy that wants to be there. So if he's not playing a lot, you're probably not going to have a potential locker room issue with a guy like that.
Yeah, and you know, Mike Young's a savant. The fact that he's trusting you down the stretch, that would give me a little bit of confidence. And maybe, you know, and I keep referring to the pro level, right? You come from a team that didn't play well, your value's probably not as high. But if he just comes to Carolina and contributes in any way, form, or fashion with that Carolina on the horse's chest, right? We would love to keep him if we can, but it's also good for your personal career. That's how I kind of see it with some of these guys. Maybe that we don't know their roles, what their roles going to be. But he will get opportunity because I'm going to tell you something right now. He scored 20 points a couple times in the ACC game. Coach Davis is going to throw him out there at some point.
You know, you just made a point that I love, and I think a lot of kids don't fully understand. There's an NIL after you leave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, dudes, that if you play at Carolina and you're an in-state kid, you're going to have advantages for the rest of your life.
Look, Andrew,
on some good teams.
Andrew, listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm not sending any shots, but some of the guys that left Carolina got paid a lot of money, and I'm not saying they were not our best guys or they were not our top 3 guys, but they got paid because they wore that Carolina on their chest and they contributed to a high level team.
Yep,
that's what happens.
That's part of what's great about a blue blood.
Mm-hmm.
That has the passion that this program and its fan base and its alums have, is that for a guy like Jaden Young, okay, it may not go 100% the way you want from a playing time standpoint, but if they win and he has something to do every once in a while with some of the wins, he's going to reap the benefits for the rest of his life. And I think that's pretty cool.
You know, and you know, with Lubin and Withers, right? Those new roles are assuming at Vanderbilt and NC State. I mean, these guys are going to be starting on, you know, good teams, right? Like, yeah. and so they played well down the stretch last year at points and struggled sometimes, but at the end of the day, man, they contributed it. And look, they're starters at Power 5 schools, and it's not even a question. Like they're penciled in as day one guys.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Jalen Withers. Huge fan of Jalen.
Yeah.
Good, really good guy, man. Smart dude. With what happened in that Duke game in the ACC tournament was so unfortunate, but God, he handled that well. He's going to be fine. He's got a master's. He's going to be fine. He's playing overseas. He's going to be fine in life.
Yeah, I got a kid that grew up in Tampa. He's at Vanderbilt now, so I follow him, and he looks like he might be, you know, expanding his game. Might be trying to show something next year. They maybe can show at Carolina. So I'm excited for him. Happy for his contribution to Carolina. Wish him nothing but the best. And we're going to move on to, you know, another 4-star recruit ranked 53rd in the 2025 class, according to 247 Sports. Isaiah Dennis. What do you see from him?
Not hearing much about him. He was injured and didn't participate in practice last week when we saw. I think he's going to have a freshman season where he watches a lot of other guys play and he learns.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that, because if he sticks it out, it's like we were just saying about Jaden Young, he can benefit from it. But he's not where Derek Dixon is. I think a lot of people thought he might come in and A lot of kids are combo guards. They don't want to get pigeonholed into being called a point guard or a shooting guard. He's a combo guard, but he's probably not going to be in the rotation based on the conversations I've had. But that doesn't mean that he can't contribute and won't be thrust into some situations at some point, because rotation guys are rotation guys. But if there's some foul trouble and there's a tweaked ankle or something like that, and he can end up on the court. And he's a talented dude. He's rated pretty high. He's got a lot of other schools that wanted him. So, but I'm not hearing a whole lot, to be honest with you. Yeah. There's so many new faces. There's so much to talk about. I mean, you and I are talking about all these new guys. We were doing it for 40 minutes because that's what the program is like right now. So a guy like Isaiah Dennis just doesn't come up very often.
For sure. I watched some stuff on, I mean, he looks like a fluid athlete. He looks like potentially could be a steal potentially. So, you know, maybe we'll get to see him, maybe we won't, but another kind of good recruit for Coach Davis coming in. And so we'll move on to James Brown, who's a returning big. Didn't play a lot last season. What do you see with his role? Have you heard anything from your Carolina insider sources?
Yeah. Well, he put on 25 pounds in the offseason, but Hubert was quick to say last week, well, he's lost about 15 of that. Yeah, he got in the weight room, but Hubert said that he's lost some weight since they started practicing because he maybe put on too much. So he played at 225 last year. He's 235 now. He's legit 6'10". The thing that stood out to me at practice last week watching him was he was a pitter-patter guy. You know those young bigs that they get a ball and they're going up to explode and they sort of pitter-patter their steps some. It's not very – the launch isn't fluid. His launch looked a lot more fluid. He looked like a guy who'd been in the program for a year. Now, I don't think he's going to play a ton. But again, we're talking insurance, like with Jaden Young. I think you have a dude who's been in the program. He understands he's a project, so he embraces the moment and where he is and that there is a plan. And he worked his rear end off in the offseason to get better as a player, to finish better around the rim, and to be stronger. So at the minimum, if he's the third big behind Zayen High and obviously behind Henry, there's a lot of clubs in the country that would love to have a dude like that in that situation. So I think he's luxury, he's depth, and he's someone that if he stays the course at Carolina will continue to get better and polish his game, that he's going to play good minutes, big minutes at some point at UNC and help the program a lot. He's also a really good dude. Like the teammates love him. So you got to have guys like that even if they're not playing a whole lot, when he does get in a game, he can infuse. I'll tell you a quick story that Jalen Withers told us last year in the hallway outside the locker room at Kansas. If you remember that game, Carolina was getting blown out in the first half. And he followed up a missed layup in transition at the end of the first half and dunked it right before the horn sounded. He runs in the locker room, and he's the one screaming and yelling, getting everybody all fired up. Now, he's the project. He's the freshman. It's the second game of the year. They're in Lawrence, Kansas, and he's the one getting everybody fired up. And Jalen Withers credited him with getting the team's mind right at halftime. So he's got a lot of personality. He's a very likable dude, and he's someone that I think from a basketball standpoint can help as a third big. I don't think he's going to beat out Zayen High as the second big. I think he's probably going to be the third big based on what people have told me around the program.
I'm glad he got the pitter-patter feet because as a shot blocker, I used to love pitter-patter. They give me time to get on top of you. So,
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, for sure. Listen, when we see a guy kind of loading up a little bit, you got to get on that rim fast.
That was the most noticeable thing last week about him. He wasn't loading up.
And so next we're going to move on. Zayen High is back on the team after sitting out, with the suspension from the school last year. Another big who I thought showed flashes. I even saw he shot a couple threes in the scrimmage. How is he progressing, and what do you see from him and his potential role?
Let me ask you a question because I think you can add tremendous insight to this. When you played a dude that's 6'9", 6'10", that was a live wire, bouncy, a live wire, got some elbows and all that kind of stuff, little hair on fire, that annoyed you, didn't it? Was that kind of dude able to take you out of your game a little bit because he annoyed you so much?
I immediately think when I was in the NBA, Wenyen Gabriel. I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah.
He was a Kentucky guy. I believe it was Kentucky, right? Wenyen Gabriel? I think it was Kentucky.
I think so.
He was a guy like that, and I remember playing against him, and I used to just put my head, and I just be like, man, this is it's gonna be a long night because he's all over the place. He's a live wire. You got to box him out. He's jumping around. He's flying around. So I definitely understand that.
I think that's Zayen. I don't know where his skill level is yet right now, but he brings a lot of that to the table. So if you're going to bring a guy off the bench, either because Henry needs a break or he's in foul trouble, if he's a guy that goes out there and is not invisible and can actually shake things up and give the team some edge, some juice, I think that's a good thing. Now, I don't know where his skill set is right now.
Yeah.
But I've been told by a source very close to the situation, they think, look, he's going to play 12 to 15. He's not just going to spot sub. He's going to play because they say he's a lot better at finishing around the rim, which was so before. He thought he was a perimeter shooter his freshman year, and there were a couple of shots that he attempted that were kind of ugly. But he's a lot older and more mature now. The stuff that he went through, he manned up, he owned up to it, he dealt with the suspension. And sometimes being isolated and being away from a lot of stuff and having to fend for yourself can make you grow up. And he was forced to do that because he wasn't allowed to use the facilities last year, during the fall semester. So he had to figure some stuff out, and he stayed. Most guys would have left. And didn't leave. So I think that says a lot about him. I know that Hubert is thoroughly pleased with the progress he's made and how he's worked through the situation. And because of that, there's a lot of confidence that there's a more mature player than people saw 18 months ago. I just don't know much about the skill right now because when we last saw him, the skill had potential, but the skill wasn't there. So if he's got some skill, he can add to it, and he can do a lot of the same things that Henry can do on a minimized level, then he'll help Carolina when he comes off the bench.
Yeah, I think he's got to hone that, aggressiveness, and like you said, hair caught on fire at it. Because I remember him coming in, and he would have some moments, but he would always get in the foul trouble. He'd pick up 2 quick fouls, and you'd be like, dang, I want to see more of this kid, but he can't stay in the game. So hopefully his growth, I think his maturity from that situation, he's been around the program a long time. Yeah. So I think he could help, at least be solid down there.
I think that's what they need. Because when you think about it, if something happens with Henry, if Zayn's the first option and he's in foul trouble, you still have James. You mentioned earlier about Jiren, and I think Caleb Wilson would be willing to do that because he wants to show people he can do stuff that right now is considered outside of his box. He wants to prove that there is no box. So they do have options because they're much bigger, and they have some older guys that can play. Jiren's been in college basketball for 2 years. James Brown was in the program last year, so it's not like they'd be going to somebody very raw and without skill. And honestly, if Caleb Wilson has to play the 5 some as a reserve, can you imagine what the other things that he can do? If Hubert's got a few things drawn up for that he probably can't wait to run something like that because you could almost run some kind of 5-man, just not a weave, but just constant movement where you drive their team crazy defensively and you take their 5 out of the game and suddenly Caleb's just a ball player. So I do think that the versatility is huge, and obviously they probably would rather not Caleb play the 5. They would rather Zayen and James be able to handle the backup duties there. But if not, there are other options, which is why I think that whatever the bumps in the road through the course of the season, I think this team has the personnel that Hubert could put on the floor and say, okay, we're going to get through this period. And we'll have to wait and see 100% if that's the case. But that's the way I read it looking ahead. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle those things and what Hubert does and how quickly Hubert knows his team.
Yeah. When you look at the top teams last year, Final Four, remember there's a stat like I think all of the teams were some of the top teams in the country in second possessions and offensive rebounding. So I think we have the size and the grit to be that. Because in college basketball, extra possessions are like gold. So hopefully
2012, you guys were number 1 in the country. Yeah. You guys were incredible. The 17 team that won the national title, they're number 1 in the country. In 2009, I think they were number 1 in the country in second chance points. Last year, man, they did not have a lot. If you didn't make the shot in the half court, you got to get down defensively because they weren't getting rebounds.
Exactly. So last but not least, big fella, Ivon Metovic. Yeah, folks, I got that right. I think.
Good job.
Showed up late this summer, transferred from High Point. You can't teach size. He's 7'1". Obviously, we don't know much about him. He came in late, but talk to me about him. If you do have anything for us.
What I have for you is that he is a legit 7'1". I stood right next to him the other day, and legit 7'1". He's taller than Henry, which is so there's 2 7-footers on the roster, which hadn't been the case for a while at Carolina. Practice piece. He's a guy that looks good. Dick Vitale likes to say the all-airport team, fantastic all-airport team guy. And the players love him. Apparently, he's really funny. And he's fun to make fun of, and he's fun making fun of others. So you need levity. It's a long season. You need guys in that room that could crack a joke or you can laugh at sometimes, that can handle being laughed at. I don't really have a lot more to add on that because I don't think from a basketball standpoint he's there yet. He didn't play a ton at High Point. So if he's not going to play a ton at High Point, he's probably not going to play a ton at Carolina. But last year's team could have used him. They could at least use the guy they could put in the game, if nothing else, but to defend an inbound pass into the basket or something in a shot clock situation or end of half situation. So if you're good, if the end of your bench of scholarship guys are a Jaden Young who scored 27 and 26 in ACC games, Isaiah Dennis with all of his upside, and Ivon Metovic.
Yeah.
Did I do it? Okay, did I do it? Wow.
Yes, sir.
Dang it. We both did it. We both deserve a star on that one. If that's the end of your scholarship bench, it's not bad.
For sure.
That's not bad.
I mean, and High Point was
a lot better than what they've had for the
team.
last few years.
And High Point's a pretty good team. So he comes from a program that he knows about winning, and at least it's been around that. So that'll definitely carry over. So here we go. They open the season November 3rd against Central Arkansas. Who's starting the game?
Kyan Evans, Seth Trimble, Luca, Caleb Wilson, and Henry. Now you're going
safe.
Safe. Exactly. Vesar. I've heard 60,000 different pronunciations.
I think
I've heard a couple of different ones from him.
I think he just kind of gets fed up with like pronouncing it. So for me, when people are like, how tall are you? If you say from 6'9" to 6'11", I'm going to say yes. So maybe that's what he does with his name.
Well, you know how Carolina fans are. At some point in November, he's just going to be Henry.
Yeah.
So, like, you were John. There was Tyler. There was Kendall. There was Harry, You know, that's the way it is with Carolina basketball, which is kind of cool. Now, I have to put the full name in the story, and I got to do last names, and I got to say last names sometimes. But especially once I get to know him a little bit, I'll be a lot more comfortable just referring to him as Henry. But I think when you say Henry right now, most Carolina fans who are really clued in already know who you're talking about. All of them will know by Christmas.
Hey, look, hopefully he gets a nickname, right? Like have Big Z, maybe Big V or something. I don't know, man. If he gets a nickname, that means we're doing pretty well. So what would you consider? I have my expectation. I'm curious to see a guy that's around them every day and, just inside. What would you consider a reasonable expectation for this Carolina team?
I think this team should be a Sweet 16 club. They should get a top 4 seed.
Yep.
Sweet 16 club in that 28 win range. I think they need to do that because there's a lot of pressure on Hubert to turn in a really good year. Now, I sensed with Hubert the couple of times I've been around him that he's a lot looser than before, and he knows he's got a good team. Plus, I think that there's a really good relationship already established. I don't know if it was ever the case with last year's team. And it showed sometimes. So for Hubert's sake, I hope he has a really good year because I think Carolina, with a guy like him at the helm, is good for the program. It's good to keep that whole family thing going, provided he wins big. I think 28 wins, Sweet 16, top 4 seed, top 3 in the ACC is probably a fair expectation. And with that, they can be better. They can also not be that good, but I suspect in that Sweet 16 range. And they have upside from there, John. They really do.
Yeah. I think on paper, I mean, and this is not just because I'm a Carolina guy. Like this team should be really good. First weekend bye the ACC for sure, or first game, 2-game bye. I think they do now the 2-game bye. Yeah. So they should get a 2-game bye. And this is a second weekend team. For the money they've spent and the players they have, I don't think anything less would we be happy with. And that's where I see it. So we're on the same page.
Yeah, I think they have a deeper roster than the one that played for the national title, but that club came together late, and it was the Iron Five, obviously. I don't know if they could put 5 on the court that would be connected like that group, but It would not surprise me if this club got to the third weekend of the NCAA tournament. I think the parts are there. We got to see them play. I'm not going to get way ahead of myself or anything like this. I think you kind of see the same thing, which is why Sweet 16 is a good baseline, because Sweet 16 means you win twice from the Sweet 16, you're in the Final Four. So I do think there's potential there to be that kind of club.
And, I think contrary to other years, I think we're starting with very low expectations considering what we have, what we are. So the pressure's a little bit off. I'm a betting man, right? I think that beginning of the season, it's going to take some time for the country to catch up. But I think our first big-time game, we're going to make some noise. And so I'm excited.
Yeah, that Kansas game's going to be big.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be big for Hubert and the fan base, really big. And it's going to be big for this team because one of the things that I've had to do a lot the last few years, which I hate doing, is constantly tracking this quad one crap. See if they can get
you're right.
quad one wins just to get off the bubble. And the opportunities aren't there as much now because it's an easier schedule. You got Kansas at home. They play Michigan State in Florida on Thanksgiving afternoon, by the way. They go to Kentucky. They have Georgetown at home. They play Ohio State in Atlanta. If you don't beat Kansas at home, it starts to narrow that window of getting those quad one opportunities to take into ACC play. If they beat them and they could take care of Georgetown, take care of Ohio State, and I give them a fair chance against Michigan State, then they're in great shape when ACC play starts. And I don't have to put quad one stuff up on the site every 4 days.
Right. And we know voters fatigue. I don't know if this committee will squeeze us in there again. Shout out to them last year, kind of getting us in there.
Well, Bubba's not head of the selection committee now,
exactly.
right?
Bubba. Bubba's just, he's just outside the room. He doesn't. Come on, man. These guys are going to dinner. They're hanging out, man. Bubba was in their ear. So, Andrew, I want to thank you. This has been one of my favorite kind of podcast episodes, man, to talk about the team and kind of come full circle with you. Now I'm interviewing you and you're interviewing me.
Amazing.
So I appreciate you coming on, and I'll be seeing you around. I'll be in Atlanta potentially for the Ohio State game. I think I'm gonna come down to Fort Myers for the Thanksgiving game. So
I'll be there.
Hey, I'll see you around.
Hey, it's great to be reconnected with you, John.
For sure. For the folks at home, thanks for watching on YouTube and listening wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out Tarheel247.com for the latest wall-to-wall coverage of Carolina athletics. See you next time.